The Galactic Empire expected tacticians. They got tacticians who eat glass for breakfast, choke out nightmares before coffee, and laugh when orbital strikes miss by meters. When the humans landed, they weren't calm. They were quiet. And when killers get quiet, empires start counting body bags. The Vulthurians thought they were about to teach Earth a lesson in civilized warfare. Instead, they opened a door into something they didn't know still existed: war as hell, rage as doctrine, and humanity as the final extinction event. They expected a military delegation. Instead, Earth sent silence. No acceptance. No defiance. Just silence. The Vulthurian Empire, ancient and proud, had encountered rebellion before. They'd pacified entire star systems with a polite broadcast and a few precision strikes. Earth, newly discovered and technologically behind, would be no different. When humanity refused to respond, they were amused. When Earth's orbital station refused to acknowledge Imperial warforms hovering in low orbit, they grew curious. And when the Empire scheduled a demonstration engagement on Eris 7, a designated wargame moon, they thought they were being generous. They cleared the moon. Deployed their best observers. Installed cameras, security drones, and a full battalion of AI-assisted command personnel. One dropship came from Earth. It didn't glide down. It fell. The descent wasn't tactical. It was violent. A sonic scream across the upper atmosphere, no communications, no clearance, no deceleration until the last possible moment. The ship tore through the trees like a war god on fire and came to a halt in a crater and made itself. Then came the silence again. Commander Velrix, a Vulthurian officer bred for diplomacy and sharp creases, chuckled in the controls center. Savages. They crashed their own insertion craft. His aide blinked at the data feed. Sir, it landed on target. Precisely. Velrix scoffed. Begin the welcome broadcast. Let's show them how proper warfare is conducted. The message was sent. The humans didn't respond. 3 hours later, a patrol squad went offline. No alert, no panic, just static. When they sent drones to investigate, the feed cut out at 30 meters. The next signal was from one of their own forward surveillance towers. The camera footage played without sound. 5 Vulthurian bodies, flayed, hung upside down, swaying slightly in the wind. Their blood had been used to paint a message on the walls behind them in jagged strokes. It said, "You started a game. We're here to end it." Commander Velrix stood frozen, the polished tips of his gloves shaking. "We are at war," he muttered. "No, sir," corrected the aide. "We are at something else." On the ground, 5 humans moved without formation. No uniforms. No insignias. Just armor patched together with battlefield duct tape and spite. The one in the lead moved like he was stalking prey that didn't yet know it was being hunted. His name was Mace Harlan, and every step he took was weighed in blood. Beside him, the sniper only known as he licked a finger and raised it to the wind. No words. Just a slow grin that didn't stop at the eyes. Behind them, a short, stocky woman with graying hair adjusted the straps on her surgical kit. She was Mama Ruth. She wasn't carrying a weapon, she carried scalpels, rusted forceps, a bone saw. "Vitals are twitchy today," she muttered, sniffing the air like it offended her. "You'll get your samples," Harlan said, his voice flat. "We're just getting started." 10 kilometers ahead, an outpost bristling with sensors and turrets activated full lockdown. They'd seen the message. They were prepared. They lasted 16 minutes. The first explosion didn't come from outside. It came from the storage bay. A crate of food detonated with enough force to peel the walls back like paper. Then came the whispering. Over internal comms, an unknown signal flooded all channels. It was Z. He was singing. A lullaby, in a voice so calm it seemed surgical. One by one, the soldiers stopped shooting. Some tore off their helmets. Some began to scream. The feed went dark. Back at Central Command, Velrix watched the data collapse. "They're using some sort of psychological weaponry," the science officer stammered. We're detecting patterns designed to mimic trauma resonance, tied to auditory memory centers. They're using fear, Belric snapped. Then came another feed, hijacked, broadcast across all channels. Harlan's face appeared. Dirty. Blood smeared. Calm. You call this war? He said. No threat. No scream. Just contempt. You sterilize battlefields. You dress in gold. You run algorithms. We don't. He looked off screen. Somewhere, someone screamed. You thought we'd send diplomats? He continued, voice low, smooth like grinding glass. You thought Earth would negotiate. But Earth remembers how to hurt. So we sent the ones you never wanted to meet. He reached down. Something squelched. We're not your equals. We're your punishment. The broadcast ended. Velrix backed away from the console. The moon's terrain map shifted. Red dots, Imperial squads, went out one by one. Cleanly. Efficiently. No bodies were recovered. 3 units attempted to surrender. None of them made it to extraction. Another feed appeared. Bishop and Kane were dancing. Not literally. Figuratively. Explosions behind them. One reciting a poem in mock Voltherian verse. You came with fleets and folded flags. We came with blades and body bags. You measured stars and polished boots. We planned our truths with steel and roots. They laughed. Then they lit the jungle behind them on fire. Velric sent orders to recall all troops from the moon. The Empire didn't retreat. But for the first time in generations, it withdrew. Back on Era 7, C cleaned his rifle without looking down. Mamaruz stitched a Voltherian officer's tongue to his own throat just to see how long he'd scream before suffocating. Harlan stood beside a transmission pylon made of salvaged Voltherian limbs. He opened a direct line to the Empire. We don't want your resources, he said. We don't care for your maps. We're not here to conquer. His hand clenched around a Voltherian officer's rank insignia. It crumbled. We're here to remind you. A pause. The silence was heavy. That Earth doesn't forgive. Then, he clicked the comms off. The Empire didn't broadcast again. No declaration. No response. Because deep down, even behind their metrics and layers of command, the Voltherians understood. Earth hadn't sent an army. They'd sent a warning. The jungle moon was silent again, but not with peace. It was the kind of silence that followed a scream too loud to echo. Command had stopped sending squads. They had stopped sending anything. The Gravesend unit moved without interference now, carving a path through Voltherian territory like acid through silk. No formations. No patterns. Just blood, smoke, and messages written in things that used to be officers. Bishop hummed to himself as he knelt by the remains of a forward outpost, arranging severed arms into a neat triangle around a shredded datapad. Kane watched from a perch above, holding a detonator between 2 fingers like it was a delicate wine glass. Think they'll get the poem this time? Kane asked. Bishop nodded. Probably not. The detonator clicked. The outpost vanished. Elsewhere, Mama Ruth pulled her gloves off with care and inspected the Voltherian captain strapped to the tree. His eyes rolled back, tongue swollen from the herbal toxin she'd applied to his gums. I'm not here for data, she told him gently. Your screams are enough. He tried to speak. She tilted her head. I know. It's awful. But you scream better than your friends. She leaned in. That's your legacy now. She left him there, alive, and humming the same tune Z broadcast into the comms the night before. The same one that caused 2 platoons to fire on their own shadow drones. Up the ridge, Mace Harlan crouched over a rusted Voltherian drone core, prying it open with a bent blade and a flat expression. A faint whine escaped from inside, its AI still trying to reboot. He murmured to it. You're trying so hard to understand chaos, aren't you? He wedged a data spike into its socket, and fed it static, then screams, then Z's lullabies in reverse. The core sparked. The drone died. The sound carried down the ridge to where Velrix's remaining command staff watched feeds in horror. Only 2 outposts were still transmitting. One showed their own commander laughing hysterically and stabbing himself in the thigh. The other showed Bishop and Kane juggling grenades over a bonfire made from crushed helmets. The Empire had seen uprisings. Even full-scale mutinies. But this wasn't war. This was infection. The kind that moved in thoughts and nightmares. Commander Velrix slammed his hands on the console. Where is their chain of command? Who are they reporting to? No one answered. The adjutant whispered, Sir, it appears they're not receiving orders. They're improvising. Velrix turned pale. No soldier improvises this well. The comms officer turned from his panel, voice dry. Then they're not soldiers. The room fell into silence. Then new footage appeared. The ruins of Echo Base flickered into view. A single figure stood in the center of the carnage, Harlan, alone. No weapons visible. Just a long steel pipe in one hand, dragging a faint trail in the dirt. He spoke without preamble. You had your simulation. You had your pride. He paced slowly, speaking into the nearest drone. You thought we'd break when faced with numbers, structure, hierarchy. But what you didn't count on was that we don't care. He stopped. The camera zoomed slightly. His eyes were dark, but alive. Furious. You think we're mad? That we act without plan. But every trap, every explosion, every whisper was designed to pull you 1 inch closer to collapse. He raised a hand and pointed to the drone. This isn't improvisation. It's orchestration. And every note you hear before the crescendo is one of your own screams. He dropped the pipe. It clanged on metal. I want you to listen carefully, Valthyria. There's no one coming to stop us. Not from Earth. Not from your fleets. Not from your simulations. He paused, then smiled. It wasn't friendly. Because Earth didn't authorize us. The control room burst into noise. Officers spoke over each other, questioning transmissions, authorizations, war protocols. Velrix stared, stunned. What do you mean, unauthorized? The answer came seconds later. A second feed was unlocked. Intercepted transmission. From Earth's Black Ops network. It read, Asset deployment acknowledged. Containment remains optional. Observation only. Do not interfere. Gravesend is expendable. Another line followed. Deniability protocol active. Let them fear us. The screen faded. Velrix sat down. The war wasn't a war. It was a message. Z's new audio feed kicked in. A soft child's voice, looped over ambient battlefield recordings. Tag, you're it. Your gods are dead. Your rules are broken. And monsters don't need permission. Mama Ruth walked past the captured Valthyrian, arms tied behind his back, mouth trembling. She leaned down. We're not here for your resources. We're not even here for you. She whispered. We're here because you thought we were beneath you. That was your first mistake. She reached into her satchel and pulled out a syringe filled with a glowing compound. And this is your second. The scream echoed through the valley. At the center of the map, Harlan gathered the unit. Status? He asked. Bishop wiped soot from his face. 37 kills, 2 scares, 1 poem they might actually understand. Kane shrugged. I miss poetry class. Z didn't speak. He just held up a Valthyrian helmet with a bloody smiley face smeared across the visor. Mama Ruth smirked. We've got 3 clicks to the last outpost. Harlan nodded. Let's remind them. They move like ghosts. Above them, the Empire prepared orbital support, ships with firepower capable of melting moons. Orders were sent to purge Eris 7. But the command server never responded. It had been overwritten. Its new message flashed on every bridge, every console, every screen. This war is not strategic. This war is not diplomatic. This war is a field test. Observe the results. Or become them. Velrix, now shaking, sent a direct request for evacuation. It was denied. The final footage from Era 7, recorded by a black box drone, showed 5 human figures walking through fire, smoke curling behind them, their shadows long and twisted by heat. And a voice, just before the signal died. "Now that we have your attention, shall we begin?" "They finally sent someone worth killing," Kane muttered as the enemy fleet darkened the sky. High Strategos Varn had arrived. The Empire's living legend. A tactical genius preserved across centuries, rebuilt with layered neural matrices and 1,000 victories coded into his bones. The last time Varn personally stepped onto a battlefield, 3 rebellions collapsed before the first shot. Now, he'd come not to negotiate but to erase the Gravesend unit. Mace Harlan wasn't impressed. He stood on the edge of the burning ravine, watching the descent of Imperial drop pods like falling coffins. "They're betting the war on one name," Bishop said. Harlan cracked his knuckles. "They better pray that name bleeds." Varn didn't speak when he landed. He didn't need to. He deployed 8 legions of autonomous shock drones across Era 7 and activated full sensor lockdown. No frequencies in, none out. Just one command relayed on loop. "Purge protocol, terminate with 0 tolerance." Mama Ruth whistled softly as she watched the drones spread. "Well, that's a whole lot of shiny for such a brittle empire." Kane grinned. "Bet you 10 teeth we can hack 'em." Z pointed to the sky, then mimed cracking a neck. Harlan's plan was simple. Don't run. Don't hide. Break the swarm. The first wave came in tight formations. Clean. Mechanical. Predictable. That was their weakness. Bishop laid the first trap, rewiring an old reactor's core into a magnetic pulse grenade. When the drones passed overhead, they dropped mid-flight, twitching like insects drowning in light. Kane followed with a sonic decoy that mimicked Voltherian distress calls. The drones diverted toward the noise, and straight into a ravine lined with steel spikes made from their own fallen units. Z disappeared into the tree line and reemerged hours later with half a dozen drone cores stacked neatly like skulls. Meanwhile, Harlan hacked into a nearby drone's visual feed and stared directly through it. "Tell your strategos," he said, voice calm, "that we don't do surrender. But we'll accept his apology." The feed cut. Varn watched it from his mobile command tower. His synthetic pupils dilated. Calculations spiraled behind his irises. This wasn't disorder. This was design wrapped in chaos. He adjusted his posture and initiated countermeasures, reconfiguring drone protocols for erratic targeting, introducing unpredictable firing patterns. It didn't matter. Mama Ruth had already set loose a neurotoxin derived from local flora. It wasn't lethal to Voltherians, but it caused hallucinations in their augmented units, hallucinations mimicking combat trauma, forcing them to relive death sequences from failed campaigns. By midday, 3 entire drone legions collapsed under phantom fire. Still, Varn didn't speak. He walked through the carnage, observing, analyzing. Harlan watched him from the cliff ridge, rifle slung low. "He's not shaken. He's calculating," Bishop replied. "Same thing," said Harlan, then activated the next phase. They had one shot to destabilize Varn's central command AI. And for that, they needed to get close. Not physically, but mentally. Using a spike of stolen code from drone wreckage, Harlan constructed a neural echo, data mimicking human emotional feedback, laced with fear, shame, loss. When they uploaded it into the Empire's war cloud, the AI core hesitated. Then stalled. Then stuttered. The drones, connected to that core, began to flicker. Bishop looked up. "We broke their god." "Good," Harlan muttered. "Let's kill the priest." They traced Varn to the command tower buried beneath a mobile fortress. Getting in was suicide. So Harlan chose something simpler. They didn't break in. They hijacked one of his own siege walkers, painted it with Gravesend graffiti, and walked right through the front gate. The guards never spoke. They just died. Inside, Varn waited. He didn't look like a strategist. He looked like a statue. Cold, symmetrical, armored with artificial calm. When he turned, his voice was digital silk. You've proven adaptability. Harlan stepped forward. We weren't trying. I was human once, Barnes said, as if that explained something. Earth's first contact was with me. My rebellion failed. They kept my mind. Harlan raised a brow. That's cute. We burned our traitors. Guess they cloned yours. Varn's face twitched. You don't belong here, he said. You mock order. You desecrate command. We are what you forgot, Harlan replied. Pain. Grit. Improvisation. You built an empire out of math. We build victories from madness. Varn moved fast, too fast. His arm turned to metal and flame, slicing toward Harlan's throat. But Harlan ducked under it, grabbed the arm, and snapped the joint backward. It didn't break, but it bent, and that was enough. Z emerged from the shadows, flinging a hacked drone core at Varn's feet. It exploded in a wave of neurofeedback, scrambling his processors just long enough for Kane to plant a disruptor on the command deck. Bishop finished it with one line of code, uploaded through the tower's mainframe. It wasn't malware. It was a recording. A young Volthurian screaming for his mother, as drones flooded his trench. The sound Varn had used to train his troops turned against him. His AI core spasmed. Mama Ruth walked in, wiping her hands. He's done. Varn collapsed to one knee. His voice cracked. I was perfect. No, Harlan said, stepping forward. You were programmed. There's a difference. Varn looked up, eyes flickering. Then what are you? Harlan leaned in close. The last mistake you'll ever study. The tower lit up in flames as they walked out. Behind them, the war cloud shattered. Without Varn's signal, the remaining drones shut down across the entire hemisphere. The Empire's great purge had failed. Back at Central Command, Velrix watched the footage in stunned silence. Varn, the Empire's immortal strategos, defeated. Not with fleets. Not with missiles. But with chaos. And a very human kind of cruelty. One final message flashed across the Empire's military network, encoded in every transmission stream, sent by an untraceable signal. Your AI studied efficiency. Ours studied you. No name. No source. But everyone knew. Earth didn't send generals. They sent the ones who don't come back from wars, they just keep walking forward. The transmission began with static, then a faint heartbeat. A second later, a voice cut through, gravel and heat. This is Gravesend. We're coming. Across the Volthurian Empire, entire command centers froze. No encryption, no warning. The signal was raw, hacked directly into high-level military channels, broadcast in the language of every system they'd ever subjugated. There was no location tagged. Just that promise. They had no idea where it would land. Until it did. The Peace Summit was held aboard the Empire's flagship orbiting Centera Prime, surrounded by fleets, guards, and silence. It was a desperate measure dressed up as diplomacy. After Eris 7 fell and Strategos Varn went offline, they needed to contain the fallout. Offer terms. Call it resolution. What they got instead was a message written in fire. The bridge doors opened slowly. There was no announcement. Just 5 figures walking across the deck like they'd been invited. Mace Harlan didn't wait to speak. You dragged us here for peace? He asked, voice low. That's bold, considering we were still sharpening our knives. The Supreme Delegate stood frozen. This is a diplomatic table. You will not. Harlan reached into a sack slung over his shoulder and dropped a blackened drone core onto the glass table. Its optics were crushed, its outer shell burned. The delegate flinched. We don't do diplomacy, Harlan said. We do consequences. Kane circled the table, chewing on a stem gum, eyes scanning each Volthurian officer like they were already corpses. Bishop paced behind him, tossing a coin between fingers. Mama Ruth leaned in close to one of the envoys and whispered, Do you know how it feels to have your heart stopped and restarted just for fun? The envoy recoiled. Z smiled and licked his thumb. The room fell quiet. You don't understand what we are, Harlan continued. You think we're anomalies. You think if you contain us, the storm passes. He tapped the drone core. This wasn't your defeat. This was our demonstration. The Supreme Delegate tried again. We acknowledge the irregularities. But the Galactic Council is prepared to establish non-engagement protocols. A formal ceasefire. You'll be left alone. Harlan tilted his head. You think we want to be left alone? The table shuddered. Mama Ruth laid out a surgical knife and calmly began cleaning it. We want to be remembered, she said. Because fear is more efficient than force. Bishop stopped pacing. You tried to erase us. We made ourselves permanent. The delegate's voice cracked. What do you want? Harlan's eyes darkened. We want you to understand that this was controlled. That Earth let us off the leash not to conquer, but to remind you what the leash is for. He turned to the far wall, where a hologram of the galactic war map shimmered, still displaying the assumed boundaries of Earth's influence, barely a few systems. Harlan tapped his wrist pad. The hologram flickered, then expanded. Red marks appeared across dozens of systems. Then more. Then more. The Empire's outposts. Its listening stations. All marked. We were never isolated, he said. We were watching. And now that we've seen what you call war, we're no longer impressed. Kane leaned on the table. You sent Varn. Your perfect machine. And we broke him, Bishop added. With laughter and blood and poetry. What chance do the rest of you have? Silence stretched. The delegate reached for a data pad, hand trembling. We can issue a full black-level quarantine designation on Earth. No travel, no provocation, complete sealed status. You won't be touched. Harlan walked around the table slowly. No. Not good enough. He paused behind the delegate. You're thinking in terms of territory, treaties, restraint. We're thinking in terms of survival. Not ours. Yours. Mama Ruth nodded. We're not asking you to stay away. We're telling you. She dropped a small sphere onto the table. It rolled, ticking, then stopped. A low hum followed. The projector lit up, displaying video footage from another battlefield, one the Empire hadn't even realized had been breached. A colony world miles from the front. Fires burned in the background. Screams echoed. And in the middle stood a group of children with gravesend markings painted on their faces, watching the camera with blank, calm expressions. One of them raised a hand. Tag. You're it. The footage ended. The delegates paled. Harlan exhaled. That wasn't gravesend. That was Phase 2. He leaned forward, voice calm. We were the pilot program. The prototype. The part you could understand barely. But Earth's done pretending to be behind. The doors hissed open behind them. A junior officer, pale and shaking, ran in, whispering something into the ear of the Council's security chief. His expression twisted. What is it? The delegate asked. The officer stammered. The secondary fleet, it's gone. All ships in orbit over Elixis, neutralized. By what? By nothing, he whispered. There's nothing there. Just silence. They stopped transmitting and disappeared. Harlan smiled, just enough to show teeth. We warned you. The delegates scrambled. Panic rippled across the table. Words like containment, escalation, and total lockdown were flung into the air like shields. But Harlan raised one hand, and they fell quiet. We don't want a war. He paused. We want to be unchallenged. No threats. No ultimatums. Just truth. Bishop leaned in. The galaxy runs on fear. You ran on inertia. Now you run on us. Z stood behind the delegate, whispering a phrase in Earth dialect the translator failed to render. It didn't matter. The emotion translated perfectly. Mama Ruth placed a small card on the table. It simply read, Earth wasn't invited to your empire. It let you build one. And now you owe rent. They left without another word. Not because they had made their point, but because it was made the moment they stepped onto that bridge. By the time the Volthurians realized the meeting room was infected with a slow-acting data virus, one that broadcast the entire conversation across the galactic undernet, it was too late. Every colony, every military node, every civilian channel now had one headline: Earth didn't ask for peace. They offered extinction with a smile. And beneath that, in bold, they didn't send generals. They sent Gravesend. The room hadn't stopped spinning since they left. 3 hours after the Gravesend unit walked off the flagship, the Empire's internal net was ablaze. The broadcast had reached every system, every command chain, every academy that once taught discipline, logic, and control. Now they watched it all collapse under a single undeniable truth: Earth didn't ask for terms, they exposed the farce. On a minor world in the Outer Crescent, a Volthurian instructor stood before a class of cadets, frozen in place as the footage played again. Not the fire. Not the screams. Just the 5 humans standing still, saying nothing. And yet everything in their silence screamed, "We are not afraid of you." A young recruit raised her hand. "Why haven't we retaliated?" The instructor opened his mouth, then stopped. There was no war to win. Just a message to interpret. Retaliation meant recognition. It meant risk. On the council floor, the question echoed louder. "What do we do now?" Velrix, still pale, still shaken, leaned into the microphone. "We bury the archives. We suppress the footage. We move forward." Another voice objected. "And when they come again?" Velrix stared at the screen in front of him. It was looping a fragment of the summit recording, Harlan's final line before leaving. "We were the warning. What comes next won't talk." There was nothing else to say. In a hidden bunker beneath the Earth's crust, far from civilian networks, a new signal lit up. The screen pulsed once, then streamed the raw battlefield data from Era 7, overlaying kill-to-impact ratios, psychological degradation metrics, enemy decision curve analytics. The performance was marked. "Successful deviation model, Alpha confirmed." One technician raised a brow. "Phase 2? His partner nodded. "Already seeded." The screen changed. A map of known Empire space appeared. Then widened. Then widened again. Outside the solar system, deep within uncharted black zones, silent crafts stirred. No heat signature. No light. Just motion. Back on Earth, Harlan sat alone in a white room. No weapons. No armor. Just him and silence. He looked up as the door slid open. A man stepped in, older, suit pressed, posture precise. Not military. Not corporate. Something else. "You did well," the man said. Harlan didn't answer. "You understand that this was never about conquest. It was about psychological leverage." Harlan cracked a knuckle. "I understand we sent 5 people into an empire, and they're still bleeding." The man nodded. "Exactly. You were the warning shot." Harlan leaned back. "And what happens when they call the bluff?" The man didn't blink. "There's no bluff." He placed a folder on the table. Thick. Heavy. Marked, Gravesend Successor Protocols. Harlan pushed it aside. "I'm not training ghosts." "You're not training anyone," the man replied. "You're retiring. But the story won't." Outside that room, the myth of Gravesend spiraled. Reports emerged of new human squads, some real, some not. Stories told of Earth operatives appearing on border moons, whispering threats that turned into disappearances. Merchants swore they saw a woman with silver hair performing surgery on a Volthurian general in an alley, only to vanish. Others claimed they heard lullabies on their comms, just before power failures and reactor shutdowns. Some were lies. Most weren't. In the galactic south, a mining colony received a message scratched into its comm tower's side. No power signatures. No entry logs. It said, "We remember your vote." A week later, the colony stopped transmitting. The Empire responded with silence. Their fleets patrolled harder. Their propaganda ran louder. They doubled their conscription quotas. But every recruit, every soldier, every official now trained under a single rule. If you see them, don't engage. Don't speak. Run. Some didn't run. They weren't seen again. 1 year later, a summit convened on a neutral station in the Dervik corridor. 45 species. New treaties. New peace terms. Earth didn't attend. They didn't need to. Every time a vote was cast, every time a law was proposed that brushed too close to Earth's border, someone paused. Someone remembered the footage. The voice. The promise. What comes next won't talk. And so, Earth was left untouched. Unprovoked. Alone. Not by diplomacy. But by dread. In the outer systems, a young alien child asked his teacher, "Why don't we trade with Earth?" The teacher hesitated, then smiled. "We respect them." "Are they dangerous?" "They're human." "But are they strong?" The teacher looked out at the stars and said, "They don't win wars. They end reasons to start them." The child frowned. "Is that a threat?" The teacher shook his head. "It's a memory." Somewhere far away, in a dark corridor beneath an unlisted moon, 5 lockers stood. Unopened. Untouched. Each one bore a name. And a label above them all. "In case of arrogance, break silence." No alarms. No fanfare. Because the galaxy now understood. Earth didn't build peacekeepers. They cultivated consequences. And next time, they might not send Gravesend. They might send something worse. They might send someone you'll never see coming.